So today I thought I'd talk about a topic that is not a pleasant topic to talk about, but it needs to be talked about because I see it a lot as a therapist with the clients that I work with. And when a client first comes in to see any therapist, the therapist needs to give them the informed consent. And part of that is talking about confidentiality and the limits of confidentiality within the session. So if you were to come into session, the therapist would say something along the lines of basically that what we talk about is confidential, like what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas kind of thing. Except for if you hear about, if as a therapist, if I hear about elder abuse, child abuse, dependent adult abuse, or if I think that you're going to hurt yourself or someone else, then I have to tell somebody. Depending on what's happening will dictate who I have to tell. And dependent adult is like anyone who's not a child and not an elder because they're under a certain age. So they're in that age range, but they're still dependent. Like if they're mentally or physically disabled in some way where they can't take care of themselves. And if they're being abused in some way, then I have to still tell somebody. But the caveat in that abuse thing is if the abuse is happening between adults of equal age, then I don't have to report it. It seems very weird, doesn't it? But as far as the state of California, these are the California laws. As far as the state of California goes, if it's between two adults, it's not reportable because they think that either one of the adults could actually do the leaving or the reporting, or they have autonomy to get out in some way. They have the ability to stop that situation. A child doesn't, and a dependent adult does not, and neither does, they say, an elder. So going with that, there are a lot of types of abuse that people don't really consider. And I see a lot of this as a therapist with the clients, like I said, in different forms. And we think about the ones that are the most obvious, physical abuse and sexual abuse and that kind of thing. But there's a whole bunch of other kinds. So like the physical abuse is pretty obvious, if your partner pushes you or slaps you or hits you or threatens you with a weapon of some kind. And I don't really have to go into detail about physical abuse. It's pretty obvious. Emotional abuse is the verbal and nonverbal kind of emotional abuse. It's like if your partner calls you names and he criticizes you, I'm saying he, but I don't necessarily mean he because women are more than capable of being abusers. Or part of emotional abuse also is if your partner makes all the decisions for you, doesn't let you make any decisions. I'm not going to go into the partner's personality disorders or mental illnesses or anything else like that because it may or may not exist. Then there's financial abuse, and people don't think about that one either. Usually what happens in financial abuse is something along the lines of like your partner won't let you work, or they insist that you work, or you otherwise feel financially dependent on that partner. They keep using your name, maybe. They'll use your name as the one to get credit cards or to buy some big thing so you incur all the debt, not them. That kind of thing. Does that, do you get that? Does that make sense? So then there's sexual abuse, and that's also pretty self-explanatory in the darkest sense. But then there's also part of sexual abuse also is when your partner minimizes how you feel about sex. Let's say you're not interested because of other behavior that has gone on. Frequently, physical abuse and sexual abuse and emotional abuse are all kind of wrapped up into one lovely time. But sexual abuse can also be if like I said, your partner doesn't, he's going to do it whether he wants to do it, whether you want to do it or not, it's going to happen. And that's minimizing, how you feel about the whole thing. That can be considered sexual abuse. Spiritual abuse is one that people rarely think of, but it's actually considered abuse. Go figure, huh? So it's basically when your partner does not allow you to practice your religious beliefs or to live by your morals and your values, like they force you to do things that you would not normally do. Or if you feel like you've had to give up that part of your life because it makes them mad or it irritates them or they won't let you do it, that kind of thing. And, that can still be considered abuse because you're not allowed to be you. If you can't be you in a relationship, then it's not really a relationship. It's more like a hostage situation. So then the last one of like the big 6 or 7, I lost track, is technology abuse. And you think, well, what the heck is that? Like he steals my phone or something? Pretty much. So it can be if they don't allow you to have a phone or they check your phone all the time, see who you're talking to. They check your phone calls, they check your texts, or they stalk you and they're constantly texting you or calling you. Like if you go to work or whatever, they're calling you every 5 minutes. Where are you? When are you coming home? What are you doing? Who are you with? I'm not going to say, what are you wearing? But that kind of thing. Or they monitor your, social media, Facebook or whatever, Twitter, the X, I guess it is now. So, or they track you with GPS either in your phone or on your car, and they make threats against you on social media. Maybe you're separated or divorced or whatever like that. So, those are the basic kinds of abuse that is legitimate abuse that you could technically go to some kind of shelter or abuse agency to help you get out of those situations. In the greater Sacramento, Auburn metro areas, in Placer County, there is Stand Up Placer is one of the agencies. And then down in Sacramento is Weave. It used to be Women Escaping a Violent Environment, but they take men too. And so, because sometimes women are the abusers to the men. And that makes the man feel like less than a man, but it happens. And in gay relationships or lesbian relationships or whatever, they can be abusive back and forth. Spouses or partners or whatever, they can have relationship issues just the same. And so it's not like it's specifically for a husband and wife kind of thing. So there's also a big uptick in teen dating violence, which is all those same things, only with teenagers who are dating. And when they get to that point, it's like, they've been seeing each other for 2 weeks and it's like, oh, I just love you. I want to spend the rest of my life with you. We're going to be exclusive or whatever the words are now. And then they don't let them see anybody else. They're just possessive. And then they start stalking them on Facebook or they start checking their phones and who are you talking to? Who were you with? I haven't talked to you in the past 2.5 minutes. Where have you been? And, and that kind of thing. That is abuse. If it is a consistent thing, if it happens one time or, briefly for a short period of time and you talk about it and you figure out, oh, okay, I misunderstood. All right, fine. But if it's a pattern with the same people involved, that is abuse. It needs to stop. And if it involves physical abuse in any way, violent abusers do not de-escalate. They don't go from, pushing and shoving to just talking about it. They go from pushing to shoving to choking to slapping and hitting and pushing you off the balcony. They will end up killing you at some point. So if you're in a relationship or somebody punches holes in the walls or kicks the dog, don't get me started on those kind of people. Don't get me started on those kind of people. But if they show violent tendencies, throwing things around, that's also physical. Physical is basically anything tangible. So if they're heaving the checkbook across the room or breaking plates and throwing cups and saucers at you or whatever, that's physical abuse. It's not to be tolerated. And I know that a lot of people go, well, why don't you just get out? Sometimes it's a little harder than that. But once you get out, then you'll get this whole thing from the other side as, oh, I swear I'll never do it again. I just had a bad day. I promised, I love you so much. Come back. It's okay. I'll never do it again. I promise. 2 weeks later, it happens again. It's a pattern. That person needs help. In the meantime, while that person needs help, there's no reason for you to be stuck in that relationship where your life is in danger. Take your kids, take your animals, and get out. But again, like I said, it has to be done in a way that's not going to get you killed. I don't want to sound dramatic, but this is a legitimate thing. And that's why going to one of your local agencies, you know, pretty much any metro area has some kind of domestic violence agency, even if it's just in your county. Because there's a way to get out without getting yourself killed. However, if you're in a relationship, or let's say you're in this environment where there's an abuser, particularly a physical abuser or sexual abuser, and things are going south with an argument really fast, call 911. Go to a neighbor's house. Do something. Make sure, if you can, take your kids with you, but call 911. Don't let it escalate if you can help it. I know it's not always possible. Sometimes you're incapable of it because of you're basically a prisoner in that situation. But when possible, call 911 and get out. Because, like I said, especially when it comes to physical or sexual abuse, it doesn't get better. Not that any of the other ones are any less kind of abuse, and it's not any more pleasant to live with. But it's, like I said, it's not a pleasant topic. It's just not. And there's no way to sugarcoat it. You just have to talk about it the way it is. So, if you're walking through Costco and you see somebody, walking through Costco with their spouse and they're walking, 12 steps behind and with their head down and not able to talk to anybody because they're all close and the other guy's yelling at them, hurry up, get over here. It could be an abusive relationship, not that you can necessarily do anything about it. You could, I guess, call the sheriff or whatever, but, you might not see it in your own relationship, but if someone in your life who you love dearly says something to you about, hey, is this going on, or is everything okay at home? How's it going with so-and-so? You might consider either seeing a therapist if you're allowed to, talking to someone else, even calling a hotline. Sometimes in certain counties, certain areas, there's a hotline. And speaking of hotlines, this is kind of on the topic because if you are in an abusive relationship, sometimes you can feel a little suicidal. It's legit, I totally get it. If that is the case, there's a nationwide, in the United States, there's a nationwide hotline number. It's 988. Simple. 988. That will get you to the suicide hotline and you can talk to them. I'm not feeling very well right now. I think I'm going to, end it or whatever. So there's ways, investigate the ways, and there's no reason to put up with that. You deserve better than that. If you're in a relationship like that, you deserve better than that. And a lot of times if you are in a relationship like that, you start to doubt yourself, going back to the gaslighting thing that we just did, the other day, is you start to think, how stupid am I to have gotten into this situation? How could I not have seen this? Wow, I must really be dumb. Don't go there, because the people that are the abusers have a way of being charming and so sweet and so wonderful, and until they're not. It's easy to be fooled by a lot of them. So there's much to be said on abuse and different types of abuse and things like that. But I don't want to go into great and gory detail about it all. There's no reason to do that here. So if you want to learn more about it, look up wherever your locality is, your agencies in your area. And more often than not, they have a list of what kind of abuse qualifies as domestic abuse. And if all else fails, you can even ask a therapist or a sheriff's office, or a therapist, a religious leader of some sort of, like a pastor or whatever you have. You can get these lists online. What is domestic violence? And you'll find it. So anyway, again, not a pleasant topic. I'm sorry I had to bring it up, but it was something that came up the other day and I felt like it needed to be talked about. So on that pleasant note, I will check out it for the moment. So if you have any questions or comments about this not pleasant topic, leave them below in the little comment section and let me know, because there's a lot of stuff, like I said, a lot to be said about this. So anyway, on that note, I will talk to you later.